A small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of history. Mahatma Gandhi. The Kalari Empire had ruled the stars for millennia, their dominance unchallenged, their supremacy unquestioned. The Kalari were a species forged in the crucible of war, their culture built on a single unshakable belief: only the strong deserve to rule. To the Kalari, warfare was not just a means of conquest. It was a sacred rite, a test of worthiness. Those who could not stand against them in battle were deemed unworthy of self-rule and relegated to the status of servant races. This was not cruelty, but necessity. The weak existed to serve the strong, and the strong existed to rule. It was the natural order of the universe. The Kalari conquests followed a precise, almost ritualistic pattern. When they encountered a new species, they would first study them, learn their strengths, their weaknesses, their cultural touchstones. Then they would strike with overwhelming force, targeting whatever would break the species' spirit. For some, it was the destruction of their homeworld. For others, it was the capture of a sacred artifact, or the execution of their leaders. Once the species surrendered, they were incorporated into the Empire. Their populations were dispersed across the galaxy, their skills catalogued and their roles assigned. The Kalari were not needlessly cruel. Servant races were viewed as resources, and resources were not to be wasted. But they were also not equals. They were tools, cogs in the vast machine of the Empire's war effort. When the Kalari discovered humanity, it was barely a footnote in their history. Humans were a young species, still confined to their single-star system, still reliant on primitive chemical rockets. The conquest of Earth was swift, almost effortless. The Kalari fleet arrived, issued their demands, and when the humans inevitably resisted, they crushed them. Earth's governments fell within days, and the Kalari declared victory. The announcement of humanity's subjugation was a mere 500-character summary in the Imperial Information Bureau's Daily Digest. It was unremarkable, one of thousands of such announcements. The Kalari didn't even bother to send a representative to Sol. Why would they? The humans were just another servant race, destined to fade into the background of the Empire. And for a time they did. Humans were dispersed across the Empire, their nimble fingers and adaptability making them ideal for maintenance and detail-oriented tasks. They became a common sight in factories, shipyards and repair bays, their presence as unremarkable as the machines they serviced. The Kalari paid them little mind. Why would they? The humans had been defeated. They knew their place. But the Kalari had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that all species thought like them. To the Kalari, defeat was absolute. A species that surrendered accepted its role in the Empire. It was a universal truth, as immutable as the laws of physics. The idea that a defeated species might harbour resentment, might plot and scheme to undermine the Empire, was incomprehensible. It was not just foreign, it was unthinkable. The Kalari had never encountered a species like humanity. Humans introduced the Empire to a concept it had never known: insurgency. At first, it was subtle. Humans gathered in groups, as many species did, but these gatherings were not social. They were strategic. Humans shared knowledge, passed on skills, and quietly spread their discontent. They learned to manipulate the Empire's systems, to exploit its weaknesses. They hacked into automated monitoring programs, altering what the systems listened for, what they reported. They sabotaged equipment, not enough to be noticed, but enough to cause delays, to create inefficiencies. They whispered to other servant races, planting seeds of doubt, of rebellion. The Kalari never noticed. Why would they? The servant races knew their place. They were resources, tools, not threats. The Kalari were too busy waging their endless wars, too consumed by their own superiority to see the resentment simmering beneath the surface. They missed the looks of hatred in human eyes, the quiet anger that burned in their hearts. They missed the way humans worked together, not for the Empire, but against it. The first signs of trouble were small. Equipment failures became more frequent. Supply chains began to falter. Production schedules slipped. The Kalari dismissed these as minor inconveniences, the inevitable result of an empire spanning thousands of star systems. But the problems grew. Entire sectors began to experience delays. Frontline commanders reported shortages of critical supplies. The Empire's war machine, once unstoppable, began to slow. Krell Voss, a low-level Imperial auditor, was one of the first to notice the pattern. Assigned to investigate the grain maintenance issues, he travelled from sector to sector, collecting data, piecing together the puzzle. What he found was alarming. The problems were not random. They were deliberate, systematic, and they all traced back to one species: humans. Krell tried to warn his superiors, but they dismissed him. The humans? They scoffed. A servant race? Impossible. They were defeated. They know their place. But Krell knew better. He had seen the data, the patterns. He had seen the way humans worked, the way they manipulated the systems. He had seen the quiet defiance in their eyes. They were not just maintaining the Empire's infrastructure, they were controlling it, and no one had noticed. As the Empire descended into chaos, with factions forming among the Kalari, and civil war breaking out on multiple fronts, Krell travelled to Earth. What he found there shocked him. Earth was not the broken, subjugated world he had expected. It was thriving, bustling with activity. Ships were being built, resources were being gathered, technology was being developed. The humans had not been defeated. They had been biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Krell realized with a sinking feeling that the humans had been playing a long game, one that spanned generations. They had infiltrated every level of the Empire, from the lowest maintenance worker to the highest echelons of power. They had manipulated the Empire's systems, its bureaucracy, its very culture, to their advantage. And now, as the Empire tore itself apart, the humans were ready to reclaim their freedom. Krell tried to warn his superiors one last time, but they were too consumed by their own infighting to listen. A species once defeated stays defeated, they said. We defeated the humans. They are nothing. But Krell knew the truth. The humans had never been defeated. They had simply been waiting, planning, and now they were ready to strike. As he sat in his office, surrounded by the crumbling remnants of the Empire, Krell could only watch in stunned silence as the humans began to rise, their quiet insurgency finally coming to light. The Kalari had thought themselves invincible, their rule eternal. But in the end, they were brought down not by a mighty foe, but by the quiet, determined efforts of a species they had underestimated. The humans had turned the Empire's own systems against it, and now they would reclaim their place among the stars. Krell leaned back in his chair, a sense of dread settling over him. The Empire was falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The humans had won, and they had done it without firing a single shot. A species once defeated stays defeated, he muttered to himself, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. But we never truly defeated the humans. And as the Kalari Empire crumbled around him, Krell could only wonder what kind of galaxy would rise from its ashes.